What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today we've got this sunbathing starfish design. Now there's a link to everything you're going to need in the description down below in the requirements, the palette and the brushes that you're going to need. The canvas size for today is 2000 by 2000. And if you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so hit that subscribe button down below for weekly tutorials. And I'll also throw up the latest 3 that I've been posting over on my Patreon. Patrons get access to 3 exclusive tutorials every single month, as well as extra benefits such as early access, merch and more. So hit the link down below and show your support over there. And if you're interested in any of the equipment I'm using, the Sketchboard Pro that you can use code JOELCREATE for 10% off, or the Paperlike screen cover, or the pen tips grip and glove, there's links to all my equipment in the description down below. And with all that said, let's get started. Once you've created your canvas, you'll notice that if I go into my layers, I've inserted the stencil that's also in the description down below. Now this is just meant to be as a sort of guide just to get your sort of layout set up correctly. And we can just simply lower the opacity down of that so it's nice and faint so we can crack on with the rest of our design. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers and let's create a new layer. And let's drag it underneath our stencil. And then let's go to our colors. And then we're going to grab this blue here. So in this sort of collection of bluey colors, we're going to grab this one here. So it's the 4th column from the right, the 2nd color down. And then once you've tapped on it, drag the color onto the canvas. Next, we're going to go ahead and sort of lay out our ground area. So we're going to go to our layers again. Let's create a new layer. Let's go to our colors. And we're going to grab this color here in the middle of the 1st column. We're going to go to our selection tool. We're going to use the option of rectangle and we're going to turn color fill on if it's not already. And we want to draw a little line across the top here. So we're going to draw here, create a big box and then let go. And then you can grab your cursor if you need to, tap on your cursor and use the freeform option and maybe just bring that down a tiny bit. So you can see there I'm roughly at about 2000 by 1500 and then tap on my cursor when I'm done. Now that's kind of the basic proportions. Let's start adding in some extra colors into the background area. So we're going to go to our layers. Let's go back down to the blue layer. Let's create a new one. Let's go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here. So the 4th column from the right again, and it's the top color this time. We're then going to go to our selection tool again. We're going to continue with the rectangle and color fill, and we're just going to draw a box towards the top area. So something roughly like that. Tap on your selection tool. Now we've added that color in, we're also going to go to our colors again, and you'll notice I've added another color in this 4th column from the right, and it's the bottom color we're going to grab, the darkest tone. We're then going to go to our selection tool, and if I zoom out, we're going to do the same but sort of here instead. So we're going to draw a box. That's pretty good to me, and then let go. Tap on your selection tool, and then we're going to grab our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right until we blur those 2 colors in together. And I think around about 35 to 40% should look pretty good. I'm going to drop it to the lower of that, maybe about 35%, and then tap on your selection tool. Now that just gives us that nice little bit of lighting that's coming from the top of the scene down onto the sand. Next, let's go ahead and go to our layers again. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and double tap in the top left-hand corner to select white. We're then going to go to our brushes, and we're going to go to the collection that's in the description, which is going to be the free water brushes. And in here, we want to use the light underwater 2 at the bottom. We're going to go ahead, and my brush size is set to about 42%. It doesn't really matter for now, but we're going to tap smack bang in the center of the screen to get some beams. We're going to grab our cursor and let's move them up to start with. And then let's maybe grab our uniform option and make them a little bit wider. We want them to cover the majority of the width, but they're going to be nice and faint in comparison. So I'm going to leave them sort of there, but then I'm also going to grab my distort tool and I'm going to bring this node in a little bit, and I'm going to bring this node in a little bit as well. So now we've got a nice angular look to those lines, and I'm going to tap on my cursor when I'm done. We're going to go to our layers. We're going to lower the opacity of this right down to about 16%, 16 or 15, and we're going to then go to its layer option and change it to add. Now all we're doing here is just adding in a little bit of background content and a little bit of filler there. The next step is to work on the sand layer here. So we're going to go to our layers. We've got the sand layer there. We're going to go ahead and tap on that layer, and we're going to add a mask to it. Now adding a mask means that a mask can show and hide different parts of the layer depending on if it's black or white. So currently, because the layer is all white, it's showing all of the layer. However, if I grab my brush and I grab any brush down here under calligraphy, and let's grab the monoline, if I draw in black, which I am, it's going to hide parts. and then if I painted that back in with white, it would reveal it. So we're going to go to our brushes, we're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush, and we're going to still use black, and the brush size is set to, let's go for a large size, maybe roughly around about 25%. Going back to your layer, just make sure you're on the mask, so it's the top one. And then we're just going to simply feather out that top edge. Now I always rotate my canvas, but we're just going to go backwards and forwards until we start to feather that solid line out completely, and just get rid of that until that sand just runs off into the distance and there's no solid line there anymore. And then what we can do is just start to maybe just round that a tiny bit, nice and lightly, on either side of our circle where our starfish is going to sit, and making sure it's nice and even on either side. We're then going to do the same in this bottom right hand corner, just get rid of a little bit here in a nice curved motion, and down here as well, just in a nice curved motion as well. Maybe a bit firmer right in the corners, just to really get rid of all of that. And that's going to be basically where the lighting's all coming down and landing. Now let's go ahead and add some extra color to our sand. So let's go to our layers. Let's create a new layer and tap on that layer and clipping mask it. So now that's clipped to the sand. We're going to go to our colors, and we're going to grab the darker tone out of the 3 that's in the first column, so the bottom one. Still using our soft airbrush, just around the edges, we're just going to darken it up a little bit with a slightly darker tone of that sort of sandy tones. Going right around the edges, and then a little bit towards the top edge as it runs out into the distance. We're just adding in a tiny sort of extra bit of tone onto the sand. Now that that's done, we're going to use our template to go ahead and gauge where we're going to put the beam of light that's really coming down and where our starfish is going to be sunbathing. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the top color in the first column. We're then going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. We're also going to tap on that layer and clipping mask it. We're then going to go to our brush library. We're going to go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And all we're going to do is draw in a circle. Hold your pen at the end and pop your finger on the screen to get a nice perfect circle. You want to roughly match the width of that stencil, and then drag and drop your colour in. Then grab your cursor, and then we can grab the freeform option, bring this node down, and then we can start to sort of match that up to the stencil a little bit closer. Now if you go to snapping and turn that on, you will get the option down here of an orange line that's going to run straight through the middle of our design, which lets us know that circle is perfectly centered. So we're just going to move that down into position, maybe a smidge further, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. Now that's looking a little bit too sharp, so we're going to go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur. We're going to swipe from left to right and just blur that out until we hit something roughly around about sort of 20 to 25%. And when you're done, simply tap on your adjustments. So now we've got a very sort of basic area that we can now start to add some nice details to. So let's go to our layers. Let's create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors now. We're going to grab this tone here, the second column along. It's the only color in it, it's at the top. And we tap on that. We're going to go to our brushes. We're going to go down to the option under spray paint, and we're going to use the flicks brush. Now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out a little bit. Our brush size is set to about 15%. We're just simply going to paint backwards and forwards and cover the majority of the page, nice and lightly and nice even strokes. Make sure we don't add too much in certain areas. Once you've done that, you're going to grab your cursor. You're going to grab the freeform option first of all and drag this node down until you roughly hit the horizon line. Then what we're going to do is to add some perspective to make sure that that sand in the distance is nice and small compared to the sand in front. We're going to zoom our canvas right out. We're going to grab the distort option, and we're going to grab this node here and just drag that to the right hand side. Now, you might have to zoom really far out, but what we want to do is we want to move that all the way to the right until the middle node is now sat on that line. And then you can grab this node and position it back in the center. And then once you've hit the center of your canvas, you can then zoom in, take a look at how you've done it. That looks good to me. Tap on my cursor. I'm then going to go to my layers. I'm going to tap on that layer and I'm going to clipping mask it. So it's now clipped to the same shape that we had for the land. Now if we take a look at that, in the distance here we've got a bit of a horizon line. So what we want to do is we want to grab our eraser, if we tap on it again and we go to airbrushing and the soft brush, we're going to reduce our brush size down to something around about 10 to 15%, and then in the distance we're just going to go backwards and forwards very lightly and just erase that sand that creates a very strong sharp line. You can also maybe get rid of a tiny bit down here if you want to just feather this out in the corners, just to likely make that a nice soft edge. And now we've got a nice little bit of speckled sand in there. But what we can do to make this really pop is we can go to our layers. Let's swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one that we've now got, tap on it and alpha lock it, meaning you can't paint now outside of that space. But if we go to our colors and we grab this dark tone out of all of our sand colors and we go to our layers again, and we tap on that layer and use the option of fill, it fills it in with the color that we've got currently selected. Now you notice that your sand has sort of changed a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tap on that layer and unalpha lock it. And all we're going to do is we're going to grab our cursor, we're going to zoom out a little bit, we're going to grab the uniform option, and we're simply just going to scale this up the tiniest little bit, so something just ever so slightly. And now you'll notice all your sand has got a nice shadow underneath it. And then with snapping turned on, we're just going to push that back into the center. And then we can position it so that the sand in the middle doesn't have much of a shadow, but everything around the outside does. Tap on your cursor when you're done. Now we're not going to leave it that strong, we're going to go to our layers. We're going to tap on the layer, its N value, which stands for normal, and we're going to change that to overlay. And then we're going to drop that down to, let's go down to about 50%. And then that should, if we tap away and zoom in, give your sand a little bit of a sort of undershadow everywhere other than in the center where the light's coming straight down, and everything else is getting a shadow as it casts outwards. And that makes it look a lot more detailed. Now, one of the final steps before we move on to the actual starfish is the little water effect from the light above. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. We're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the top clip layer and create a new one. And then we're going to go to our brushes. We're going to go back up to that collection that we've got for this tutorial, the free water brushes. And we're going to go ahead and use this water texture 1. So the second one down. My brush size is set to about 49%. And all I'm going to do is just paint the entire screen from left to right in one motion, hopefully, like so. Then what we're going to do is the same sort of distort trick. So we're going to grab our cursor. We're going to grab the freeform option. And then we're going to grab this node and drag it down to basically our horizon line. We're then going to zoom out so that we can do the same distort. So we're going to zoom right out, grab this bottom right node and move it all the way to that bottom right hand corner of our canvas. So you can see this one here now sits perfectly there. And then when we zoom out even further, I can move that all the way across and position it again in the center of our design. And it can be rough, it doesn't have to be pixel perfect to the center there. Then tap on your cursor. Now we need to go ahead and go back to the layer. Let's first of all tap on it and clipping mask it to the same shape. We're going to tap on its N value for normal, and we're going to scroll this down until we hit the option of soft light, and then tap away. Now we can go ahead and start adding in our starfish. So let's go to our layers. Let's create 2 new layers, and then we can swipe on the bottom one that we just created out the 2 and group them together. Now this will be our starfish in here, so we can keep things nice and tidy. So then we can go to the bottom one. We can go to our colors, and let's grab the middle color on the 4th column along. So this middle tone here, and we've got one brighter tone above and a blue tone, which are going to be our highlights. And then we've got these slightly darker colors underneath, which are going to be our shadow colors. So we're going to tap on the middle one on the 4th column. We're going to go to our brush library. We're going to go down, and we're going to go back to calligraphy and the monoline brush. You can make that nice and small if you want to, something maybe about 10%. That's nice and small. Now, one thing I would advise, if you tap on your brush and then tap on the brush again, you'll get the brush studio. And if you go to stabilization, if you turn your streamline all the way up and your stabilization to about 50%, your lines will be made nice and smooth for you. And get rid of all those jitters in the line. So if we tap away, we can use this guide now of the star to gauge how we want to draw our starfish in. Now, starfish itself isn't just going to be point to point. They're going to be nice curves in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just use it as a guide. So let's go from here. I'm going to go round a little bit, hold my pen down to get a nice smooth arc. You don't have to do that. I'm going to go to here. And then from here, I'm going to create a nice point. Curve that up into this one, the one on the left now. Let's go ahead and use the point here to get started with. So maybe this one comes across here, down a little bit, and then curves round on the end, like so. And then grab that curl. Run that into the body. Now, it doesn't matter if your lines run out like that, but it may help you get an idea for sort of your movement of your starfish. The top one here, I'm going to simply start here so I get some momentum running out like so. And then from there, I can come back on myself into here like that. Let's then go over here as well. I'm going to create a nice little bump here and then another one into the point at the end. Zooming out, making sure we're nicely proportioned still. We're going to go along here and then run that into the point. And then this one here, I'm going to go ahead and create a nice curved on the top point. And then from here, come around into that point on the end. I don't want to make them too pointy, so if you do something like that, maybe just think about maybe just rounding that off a little bit more. We want to create nice soft corners. And then zooming out, take a look at your starfish. You can go ahead and drag your color into it. That may help you gauge sort of where you are with it. And I'm pretty happy with mine, so we can move on to the next step. Now at this point, you can go ahead and go to your layers and you can actually turn off your stencil because we no longer need that. What we will do though is while we're here, we're going to swipe that layer to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the darkest tone, so the one in the 5th column at the bottom. We're going to drag that into the space of the starfish. Now you won't see any visual change, but if we check our layers, we've got a darker version. Now that darker version, we're going to tap on its layer options here and we're going to go up to linear burn. Now we want to go to our adjustments. Let's go to perspective blur and let's move that point right up above the starfish, sort of straight down the middle though. And then swipe from left to right and it will start to push the blur out in the direction that it's pointing from that point. So you can see if I move this, it will actually start to adjust your motion. So if I push this back up here, that looks good to me. Tap on my adjustments. I'm then going to go ahead and go to our adjustments again, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right, just creating a bit of a softer edge to that. So that's about 7%. Tap on your adjustments, grab your cursor. Let's move that down a little bit so it's nicely on the sand. And we should end up with a lovely little shadow there. Tap on your cursor. Now go to your layer and just tap on the LB, which is now linear burn, and just lower that down. And we want to go for something maybe about 75%. Then tap away. So we've got a starfish now with its shadow on the sand. Let's start to actually shade in the starfish itself. Now for this, we're going to do a couple of different layers and different sort of building up of colors. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the starfish layer and we should have an empty layer above it. If we don't, tap the plus and then tap on that layer and clipping mask it. So it's now keeping us contained within the boundary of the starfish. And now for this, we want to sort of use the selection tool to make sure that these front legs sit in front of those legs. And then anything else we want to, we can create layers of depth. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our selection tool. We're going to turn off color fill. It's very important to turn that off. We're going to go to freehand. And then this leg here, I want to follow this line of motion into here so that I can make sure when I shade, I can put this sort of in front of that. So I'm going to follow that line now into here. And then I'm not really fussed about anything in here. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe just run that straight into the point there and then go all the way around and tap on my dot. Now that's given us this little part here that we can start to paint in. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to go to our colors and then we're going to go ahead and let's start with some shading first and build up the highlights on top. So we're going to grab this darker tone at the bottom of the 4th column. We're going to go to our brush library and we're going to use the brush that I've put in the description down below, which is the dust brush. And then with that, my brush size is set to, let's go for maybe about 10%. And we want to darken up this bottom edge here. So, and we want to just bear in mind, we don't want to run too close to this line, nor up here. We want to sort of, if we do run into that line, let it just fade out nice and light because everything that meets in the middle is going to be the same level, if that makes sense. It's only here we just have to define that that's in front. So we're going to darken up down here, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and switch it straight out to the 5th column along in the bottom color. Then we're going to darken up down here. Emphasize that shadow even more, pushing that right towards the edge and then up towards the center of the starfish, as you can see there. We're then going to go ahead and switch our color out and we're going to grab the highlight color here. So in the same column, the 5th column, the top color, it's like a slightly light blue, and all we're going to do is right close to this edge, maybe reduce your brush size down to about 5%. We're just going to brighten up that edge, just right underneath. That's all we want to do, just a little bit of a highlight underneath. Super faint as it runs into there. I'm then going to grab my colours again. Fourth column, the top colour. Increase my brush size back up to about 8%. And then just here on the top, I'm going to start to add in a highlight. Let that run into the centre. Again, I'm pressing lightly as it gets to here, but we do want to make sure it stands in front of there. So maybe you can push your highlight just up into this little edge here, so that this now has a highlight and it will sit in front of there nicely. So we're just running that over the top and then down like so. That's looking pretty good. And then we could just spread that highlight out a little bit more. Now, if you want to, you could switch back to your shadow color while we've got this selection. So I'm going to go back to my colors, grab my shadow color again at the bottom of the 5th column, reduce that down to about 4%, just darken this in here a little bit more. So just add quite a dark streak running through the bottom edge. You can see that's quite a sort of solid line there. And then that can nicely sit as it is. Now, because we've got the selection still done and we want to sort of now move on to here, because this is what we're working with really, is sitting this in front. If we hold down on our selection, we'll get the options back up at the bottom. Now, if we invert that selection, we've now selected everything but this. So now we can work on this one here and then define that edge even more. So let's go to our colors and let's go to our sort of light shadow color, the 4th column at the bottom. Let's then go to our brush again. I'm going to increase it back up to about 7 or 8%. And then we're just going to shade straight in behind here and do the same. So right towards the bottom edge, we're going to sort of darken that up right around there. And you can see now that we've got a highlight sat in front of our shadow, and that nicely separates the two. So I'm going to push that all the way around to the underside of here, being quite firm under there. And maybe just on the top edge, we add a little bit of a shadow, just a very light one. We can come back to it afterwards if it's too strong, like so. Let's then switch out to our darker shadow color. So we're going to go to our colors again and grab the darker tone. So that in the 5th column, the bottom color, and again, just in here, just darken up that edge right towards the bottom. That's looking good. And then maybe in a circular motion, I can emphasize that curve a little bit there. Now that looks good to me, so I'm going to switch to my colours and then go to the light blue in the 5th column at the top. And again, reduce my brush size down to about 4 or 5%, or even 3. And then let's go a bit bigger, let's go back up to 4. I'm just going to brighten up this edge here a tiny bit and then push that down. But I don't want to push it into this dark crevice too much, so I'm just going to leave it out there. I'm then going to switch my colour out and go to the light pink at the top of the 4th column. Increase my brush size back up to about 7 or 8% and then just brighten up this top edge. That's where our highlights are, just sitting on the top there. And you can start to move into this shadow here that you created on the edge. Brighten that up there. Fade it out, let it run out nice and lightly into this area here. And then that's the 2nd one done. But again, if you want to, you could go to your shadow color. So in the 5th column at the bottom, reduce your brush size down. And then just sort of emphasize those shadows a little bit more, so you can really punch out this edge here if you want to, adding in quite a solid sort of shape, but just enough, not too much. Let's then switch our color out to our shadow color for the sort of middle shadow colors. So the 4th column, the bottom color. Increase your brush size back up to about 5%, and let's move on to the next one here. So we're going to go ahead and go around here, creating a nice shadow. Now this one might be a bit trickier simply because it's quite face on, so we just have to sort of bear in mind where our lighting is. We're going to go right around the edges, and the lighting is going to be coming straight down on the top here in the middle, so we want to shadow up the sides. So we're going to shadow up this side, we're going to shadow up this side as well, and you can see I'm bringing that shadow in a little bit into here and then pushing it round as I go. We're then going to switch it out to our darker shadow color, so the bottom of the 5th column. Just darken up any areas you feel necessary. Now this one, being so face on, you might not be able to get too many dark shadows. So just bear that in mind. You don't have to sort of add quite a big area like these two that we just worked on. Then we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the highlight tone that we've been using for the underside, so the top of the 5th column. And then I'm just going to sort of very lightly just add in a tiny bit right towards that top edge. And that's about it really. There's not really going to be much of it. Let's try the left hand side, see how that looks. Maybe just a couple of speckles. I zoom in, you can see we've got a little bit there and a little bit up here too. Let's then move on to our colors again and our light pink at the top of the 4th column. And then we're just going to run that down sort of the spine here into the middle. Run that across like so. Now what I will say at this point is currently we've still got this selected, and for now I think we can get rid of it. So we're going to tap on our selection tool and remove that. And you can see the work that we put in just to create that sort of identity that this one sits in front. Now we can start to really work out in the center and join all of our highlights together. So we've got one coming from that side, one coming from the top now into the center area. And then we can start to bring this highlight across with us and link them up. Like so. Now let's move on to the 4th one. So for this, let's go ahead and grab our midtones again, which will be this color here, the bottom of the 4th column. Now, bearing in mind the angle of this one, we don't think we need to make a selection. We just need to bear in mind that this leg may run up into here. So maybe we start here and just darken that area up and then push it all the way to the right hand side. So just keep adding in that shadow color on the underside. And then without creating a selection, we've kind of done the same thing. Let's then go ahead and darken just the top edge. Just add a little bit of a sort of rolling shadow. Looks good. Let's then grab our darker shadow color. So go to our colors in the bottom of the 5th column and then darken that bottom side up here like so. Now this one we're not going to add quite as much to, and then maybe a tiny bit towards the top just to darken up that edge. We're then going to go to our colors. Let's grab the light blue that we've been using, so the top of the 5th column. Again, just around the bottom edge, just adding in a tiny little bit of blue right towards the edges just to add in some nice light shimmer. And if you want to, you can be a bit braver with it and push it a bit higher. But just be careful where you position it. And then I'm going to switch my color out and I'm going to go to the top of the 4th column, the light pink. Increase my brush size back up to maybe about 7 or 8%, just a bit larger, just to cover some more space. And then go along that top edge, linking up my shadows in, well, the highlights even in the middle, and pushing that down there, linking those up in the center area. Zooming out, that's looking really cool. Let's then go ahead and work on the last one here. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the bottom of the 4th column, the nice sort of dark pink, and we can start to really emphasize this darker area in the center. Start to link up our shadows a little bit here, but we kind of want to just leave a sort of hint that there's a bit of a crease there. And then bring that all the way across our leg here. It can be very dark under here, right down into that point. Maybe just push them a little bit higher. And then I'm going to go back and just try and get away with see how much even I can put in here without getting rid of too much. Now you notice I may have put a little bit of sort of lighter red on the darker red there. And when we switch to our colors now and switch out to the darker tone, the darker shadow, I can just simply get back into here, just layer on some of that darker color and then start to push it around the bottom edge here. Pushing that now around, and now our shadows nicely link up in here. There's just enough of a crease just to sort of show that there's something there sort of linking up. And then just on this top edge, I think I'm just going to add the tiniest little bit of shadow into the sort of end there. And I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to grab the light blue that we've been working with. So that one there at the top of the 5th column. Let's then just add in a tiny little bit under here. That looks sweet. Let's then do the same around this right hand side edge, I reckon. Just a little bit around there. Zooming out, that looks nice. Let's then go ahead and switch out our color to the light pink. So go to your colors, top of the 4th column, and we're getting to the end of the sort of the top area here. So I've increased my brush size back up to about sort of 9 or 10%, just to fill out this space a little quicker. Linking up our highlights in the middle. And you can, if you want to, go in sort of a circular motion just to make sure that you cover all of it. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is, now we've finished with our starfish, the first thing we're going to do is sort of bring it into its environment a little bit more. So we've got the lighting coming down from the top. with the effect that's on the floor there. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to double tap on the top left hand corner to select white. We're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new one. We're then going to go ahead and go to our brush library again. Go right to the top until you get to the water brushes that we've been using. And we're going to reuse the water texture. Now I'm going to reduce the brush size down a little bit so the pattern doesn't necessarily repeat straight onto here. And then I'm going to sort of swipe from left to right, just covering the majority of the screen. And then I'm going to grab my cursor. I'm going to go ahead and bring the freeform, the top node down towards the top edge of our starfish. And then the bottom edge down here towards the bottom of our starfish. Now you can see there's a bit of a gap. I don't want it to be too condensed in there on top. I'm then going to grab the distort option, and because we've got so much space, we can actually just simply bring the top node across and then bring the other top node across until we get some sort of perspective that's nicely balanced and sits in the middle of our design. Tap on your cursor when you're done, and then you can go to your layers, tap on that layer and clipping mask it to the starfish. We can then go ahead and go to that layer option. This one here is also going to change to the option of soft light. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start to add a little bit more of the lighting environment before we potentially add some sort of sunglasses on there. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go outside of our group, so we're going to create a new layer by tapping on the group, and just if you can, otherwise just drag your layer up and out of the group towards the top. Now we're going to go to our brushes because we still want to use white for this. We then want to go to the waves texture, and my brush size is pretty maxed out, about 80%, and towards the top edge we're just going to paint in some waves like that. Now again, you can bring that down a little bit, but then grab your cursor, grab the freeform option and just scale that up. And then all you want to do is sort of give the illusion that there's water above. So you can see I ended up moving mine a little bit higher because I don't want it to be really white and condensed here. I want it to run out nice and naturally. So we've got some nice waves at the top there. Now bring it down a little bit more than you think. Tap on your cursor, because then we're going to grab our eraser, tap on it and just make sure we're still using under airbrushing, the soft brush. I'm going to increase my brush size to about 20%. And I'm just going to brush from left to right till we fade those sort of wave lines out right in the distance. So they should end up with a nice sort of transition of nice white lines into some really faint ones. And make sure that that's nice and faint, nice and smooth. I'm then going to go ahead and go to my layer options for that. Tap on the N and lower the opacity down until we hit something maybe about 70%. Now for the main star of the show, no pun intended, we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to go to our brushes again, tap on it, and we're going to use the light underwater brush again. So we're going to go to our canvas and tap in the middle of the screen to get those nice beams back again. We're going to grab our cursor. We're going to move them up into the center so we get that orange line running down the middle, like so. And then we're going to grab our distort option and move these beams up and out to the right and left. So we end up with that sort of nice stage light almost in the middle. So you can see I've roughly gone pretty much to the edges. But then once you've made the change, grab your uniform option and scale that down. And you kind of want your beams to just about hit the edge of that sort of nice light circle we made in the middle. So potentially you might have to grab your freeform option as well, like me, and just bring that a little narrower and position it again in the center somewhere, just so that those beams almost touch our little sort of nice light circle in the middle. Grab your freeform again and just drag them down just to make sure that they definitely cover the distance, and they'll also run nicely over the top of your starfish. Grab my distort option personally and just move that slightly to the left, and I hit that orange line there to let me know I'm nicely in the middle of my canvas. I think I just need to move it slightly to the left again just to make sure my beams are nice and straight. Now once you're done, tap on your cursor. They're a bit too strong, so we go to our layers. We tap on the N value and we change it to add, which first of all really brings out a really nice bright look to it. You know, quite literally like a nice bit of light is coming from the top from the sun. But what we need to do is we need to go to our layers, go back to the A for add now and lower that opacity down to about 50 to 55%. Now that will start to bring some of that nice sort of light coming from the top, but it's not too strong when it gets down here. And what we want to do is we want to get rid of some of these beams. They're a bit too sort of defined for me. So we're going to go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right. Get rid of some of those really defined beams, but something maybe about sort of 7-8% looks pretty good. We've still got a little bit of definition in there, but not too much that it's a bit overpowering and with its definition. We want the star of the show, again, no pun intended, to be our starfish in the middle. So then tap on your adjustments when you're done. I'm then going to go to my layers again, and I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to drag it underneath the light beams that we just created. I'm going to go to my colors, and I'm going to grab this color here at the top of the fourth column from the right. So this color here. I'm going to go to my brush library. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to go back down to airbrushing. Tap on airbrushing and the soft brush. I'm going to increase my brush size up to maybe about sort of 35-40%, nice and big. And I want to add some blue towards this sort of area here, mainly centered as well, just so that we can emphasize the ocean sort of colors. So I'm going to, in a circular motion, start to go round and round and round, add in some nice blue tones and maybe a little bit more up here as well, just behind our beams. Now what you can do is if you went a little bit too far, maybe like I did, you can grab your cursor, just grab your freeform option, just move that back up. Now you want to potentially let a little bit of the blue touch the starfish, but not too much. So something about that looks good. Tap on your cursor when you're done. And now we've got some really nice blue beams rather than white beams. So now we've got our starfish. Let's go ahead and add in a nice little animated look to it. So we're going to zoom in and we're going to go to our layers. And then above our starfish group, we're going to go to the plus icon and create a new layer. We're actually going to create another new layer and then swipe on the other one underneath from left to right and then go to group. And now we can put our glasses nicely in one layer. We're going to go to our colors and double tap at the bottom just to make sure you've got black selected. And then there'll be a stamp in the description down below for the glasses. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to simply max that out to 100%, I think. Tap in the middle of the screen, just get an idea. Then we're going to go to our cursor and we're going to position them in the middle here. Now you want to sort of bear in mind where the arms are going to potentially sit. So I'm going to move mine nice and down to roughly here so that the arms, if you take a look at them, would potentially just run over the very top of these sort of areas here. So I'm going to move mine a bit more to the center, maybe a little bit up, and then tap on my cursor when I'm done. Now I've made a stamp there just to make life a bit easier. You've been working hard up until now, so we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the bottom layer out the two, and we're going to do one eye first and then duplicate it across. So we're going to go to our brush library. We're going to go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. We're going to draw in a circle in the middle of the eye. Hold your pen down and pop your finger on the screen to get a nice perfect circle. And something like that looks pretty good for size. Something like that. And then drag and drop your colour in. Now that's going to be the full eye. So for a minute we're just going to grab our cursor, position that slightly in the middle. And then I'm going to grab my distort option. I want to just bring this corner down and this one up to create more of a pointed inward look, like so. Tap on my cursor. And then I'm actually going to go to my layers. I'm going to swipe it to the left and I'm going to duplicate it. Then I'm going to tap on the bottom one out the two. I'm going to grab my colors. I'm going to grab this very bright blue on the right hand side. So the middle color on the third column from the right. Drag and drop it into the eye. You won't see any visual change because we've got the black one above. But if you tap on your layers, go to the dark pupil, grab your cursor, grab the uniform option, and then grab that node in the top right, and then move that so that your eye then sits nicely in the middle and towards the bottom. Tap on your cursor, and then maybe even grab your cursor and just move it slightly more centered, like so. Tap on your cursor when you're done. We're then going to go ahead and in this space here, we're going to tap on the pupil and clipping mask it so that we can create a new layer. Tap on that new layer and clipping mask that too. We're going to grab our colors and double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. And then we're going to make this one a bit more spherical. So we're going to go to our brushes. We're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Reduce it right down to about 2 or 3%. And then we're just going to add in a highlight towards the bottom edge here. A highlight around the top edge there. And then I'm going to go to our colors and double tap at the bottom to select black. Then slightly darken the right hand side up. And slightly on the left hand side as well. Just darkening that up, going a nice curve and following the curvature of the eye. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go ahead and on the blue layer for the actual eye, we're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate. We're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out the two, we're going to grab black and drag and drop it in. Again, you won't see any visual change. We're going to go to adjustments, Gaussian blur, So from left to right and just add in a very subtle 3% shadow. And then grab your cursor and then move that down. Just underneath the eye a little bit. And you can maybe scale that up if you wanted to with the uniform option. Just create a more rounded look. Just towards the bottom there. Tap on your cursor. Now you might need to lower the opacity down of that. So go to your layer. Tap on the N and lower that down. And let's go down to about sort of 55%. Now for a minute, that looks pretty good to me. What we can do is we can zoom out and get an idea for the eye a little bit more. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go back down to the shadow and highlight layer, and we're going to continue to emphasize that a bit more. So I'm going to go to my brush again and the soft brush with black still selected, darken up this bottom area a bit more. Darken up the eye, making it far more darker on those edges and the top right area too. Darkening that up so that we can switch back to white again. Double tap in the top left hand corner of your colors. Emphasize this bottom edge again, as well as the top edge. That looks cool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our group for the eye, and these 4 layers are our eyeball. We're going to simply pinch all of those together, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Grab your cursor. I'm going to use the flip horizontal option. Zoom out a little bit, and if you move it perfectly to the right hand side, you should get some nice blue lines to let you know you've moved perfectly across. And just position it roughly in the center of the eye there. Zooming out, we've got a nice little set of eyes there, giving us quite a narrow focal view. What we can then do is start to emphasize the glass on the actual glasses themselves. So let's go to our layers, and the frame itself is slightly opaque. So we're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it. That should thicken it out and then pinch the 2 together. We're then going to go ahead and create a new layer underneath it by tapping on the eye underneath and creating a new layer. We're then going to go to our brush library. We're going to go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. And we're going to then just draw in the lenses on the inside. So I'm going around the inside of the frame, drag and drop my color in, and do the same on the other side. Go around the frame, drag and drop my color in. We can then grab that layer, grab the N, lower the opacity right down, and we can add some nice sunglasses in there. Now what we want to do is create a new layer above that. Now if we make sure we stay within this boundary underneath the frame, if we go to our colors and double tap in the top left hand corner to select white, we can go to our brush library, we can go to airbrushing and the soft brush, and we can create some nice little lens sort of reflectiveness on here. So we'll reduce our airbrush down to 1%, just add in a little bit of a little glow down here in the glasses on both sides. And then I'm going to do the same on the top. So I'm going to increase my brush size up to 2%, just brighten that top edge of the glasses up a little bit, likewise here too. I'm going to change my brush size to 1% still, nice big one, and then just go backwards and forwards on the top edge of the glasses, creating a nice glow, and then maybe even brighten up the top left hand side of that. Let's do the same over here, little dot, and then just push it left to right, just creating a nice glow on top of the glasses there. That gives it a big reflection. Now we need to go ahead and reflect our glasses shadow onto our starfish. So we go to our layers, go to the frame, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Now grab that frame and just drag it underneath our 2 eyeballs. Then we're going to go ahead and go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur, and swipe from left to right and add in a 4% little blur there, and grab your cursor, move that down like so until you end up leaving a little bit of a gap. Tap on your cursor and then grab your eraser, tap on it and go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Reduce that size down to maybe about 3%. Towards the top edge here, just sort of feather that out a little bit more, just towards the top, and then you should end up with a nice light shadow there. Grab your layers and then grab your N and lower that down, and let's go down to about 57%. You get a nice shadow, but just enough that you can see it a little bit darker there. Now we're going to go ahead and add in a little smile and we're done. So let's go to our colors. Let's grab the darkest tone we've got, the 5th column, the bottom color. Go to your layers. Let's collapse that group down for the eyes, and let's tap on that group and then create a new layer, so it's going to be above it. Grab your brush and go to calligraphy and the monoline brush. It's all the way down to 1%. We're just going to create a nice little cheeky smile here, so just a little curve there, and then you can create sort of a little mouth here, like so. Drag and drop your color in. That will fill in the mouth area. If we zoom out, you can get an idea for its cheeky little smile. And if we zoom in, we can go to our layer, tap on it and alpha lock it. Then we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the brighter red to the left of it, so the bottom of the 4th column. We're just going to create a tongue. Just swipe from left to right, creating a nice little arc. Then go ahead and grab your brush again and go to the airbrushing and the soft brush still. It's just nice and small, maybe about 1%. Grab your colors and double tap at the bottom to select black. And then just under the top of the mouth, backwards and forwards in a nice light sort of adding of a shadow inside the mouth there. And then the final step is just to incorporate the mouth actually onto the body. So we go to our layers, create a new layer and pop it underneath the mouth. Go to your brush, go to the dust brush that's in the description that we've been using for the starfish. Go to your colors. Let's grab the shadow color first of all, and that's the bottom of the 5th column. We're going to go to our brush and reduce it right down to about 2%, maybe even 2 or 1%. And then just towards the top edge of the mouth, to darken that up the tiniest bit, like in the corners of the mouth as well. Then go to your colors and then go to this light blue at the top of the 5th column. And then around the bottom edge of the mouth, just add in a really nice light stroke following the direction of the mouth. That just adds in a nice little bit of highlight. If you pinch your 2 fingers out, go full screen, you get your nice little cheeky smile. And if you go full screen with 4, you end up with today's finished tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of this starfish design. If you did, drop a like down below, helps the channel out an awful lot. And if you're new here, I post Procreate tutorials every single week, so hit that subscribe button down below. And shout out to all my patrons. There's a link in the description down below where you can get even more tutorials from me every single month over on my Patreon. And if you're interested in any of the equipment I'm using, the Sketchboard Pro, that you can use code JoelCreate for 10% off, or the Paperlike screen cover, or the pen tips grip and glove. There's links to all my equipment in the description down below. And for all that said, I'll see you in the next one.